She woke up before the sun, as she always did, her small apartment still dark and quiet except for the faint hum of the old refrigerator. The day ahead would be long, and she knew it. She had been working at the restaurant for years, moving between tables, carrying trays, and keeping a smile ready for customers who often did not notice her at all. Yet, she liked it in a strange way. The rhythm of the place, the clatter of plates, the murmurs and laughter, all of it felt familiar, like a strange kind of music she had learned to move with over time. She dressed quickly, the worn fabric of her uniform brushing against her skin, and left her apartment, bracing herself for the hours of standing, walking, and serving that awaited. The streets were still empty, the city quiet except for the occasional car passing by. She walked with purpose, her mind already thinking about her day, the tables she would serve, the customers who might tip or might not, and the constant need to stay cheerful even when exhaustion sat heavy on her shoulders. She passed the corner bakery that smelled like fresh bread, her stomach tightening with hunger she could not afford to satisfy before work. She reminded herself to eat later, after her shift, if there was time. Inside the restaurant, the morning light poured through the tall windows, casting a warm glow on the wooden floors and tables. The place had a comforting energy, and she felt a small lift in her chest as she set about her preparations. She straightened chairs, wiped down counters, and arranged silverware with precision. She was one of the first to arrive, and the quiet moments before the doors opened were her favorite. It was a chance to breathe, to remember the small joys that made life bearable, and to imagine a different world. Behind the counter, an old piano stood, its polished surface gleaming despite the dust that had settled over time. It had been there for as long as she could remember, placed more for decoration than for use. Yet, it called to her in a way that nothing else in the restaurant did. She had learned to play when she was younger, before responsibilities and life's demands pulled her away from it. Music had been her escape, her companion, her voice when words failed. Sitting at that piano had once made her feel powerful, alive, and free, even in the darkest moments. But those days felt distant now, like a half-forgotten dream she was too tired to chase. She moved through the morning rush with practiced skill, taking orders, refilling drinks, and answering questions with a smile that never faltered. Customers came and went, their lives intersecting briefly with hers before continuing on their paths. Some noticed her attention to detail, complimented her service, or left generous tips. Others barely acknowledged her, lost in their own worlds. She learned long ago not to take it personally, though sometimes the indifference stung more than she would admit. In the quiet moments between the bursts of activity, she found herself drawn to the piano again. She glanced at it, fingers itching to press the keys, to feel the smooth ivory beneath her touch. She imagined the notes, the melodies she once knew by heart, and for a brief second, she was no longer a waitress carrying trays and balancing plates. She was a musician, a performer, someone who could create beauty with her own hands. The thought warmed her and pained her at the same time, reminding her of dreams she had put on hold and opportunities that seemed to slip further away. With each passing year, her co-workers moved around her, chatting and laughing, unaware of the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. She offered help when needed, answered questions, and kept the rhythm of the morning alive. Yet, there was a part of her that remained elsewhere, in the world of music that she had left behind. It was a secret she carried quietly, a hidden piece of herself that few had ever seen. She had learned to keep it that way, afraid that showing it might make her vulnerable, or worse. Judged. As the day progressed, the restaurant filled with the lunchtime crowd. The clatter of plates and the hum of conversation created a familiar chaos that she had grown to navigate with ease. She moved through the tables like a dancer, precise and graceful. Though her feet ached and her back protested, her mind drifted to the piano during brief lulls, imagining the songs she could play, the way the music would flow through her, and fill the room with something more than just the noise of daily life. She missed that feeling more than she could put into words. A customer's voice pulled her from her thoughts, asking for recommendations and smiling politely. She responded with practiced charm, offering suggestions and taking the order, tucking away the ache in her chest that came from thinking about what she had given up. The day wore on, the hours stretching endlessly, but she found small moments of joy in fleeting interactions, in the laughter of children at nearby tables, in the warmth of sunlight that streamed through the windows, and in the silent conversation she had with the piano whenever she could steal a glance at it. During a rare break, she allowed herself a moment to sit at the piano, her hands hovering over the keys. She remembered the first time she had played, The way the notes had seemed to come alive beneath her fingers. She pressed a key gently, and a soft sound emerged, pure and familiar. Her heart skipped, and she allowed herself to play a simple melody, her fingers tentative at first, then more confident as the notes filled the small space. The music was a balm to her soul, a reminder that a part of her had never truly been lost. But reality returned quickly. The lunch rush ended, and the restaurant needed her attention once more. She rose from the piano, a mix of satisfaction and longing in her chest, and returned to her duties. She served customers, cleared tables, and prepared for the afternoon crowd. Each step was heavy with fatigue, yet she carried herself with the same grace and dedication that had become her armor against the monotony of life. As the day moved toward evening, she found herself reflecting on the choices that had led her here. Life had been hard, filled with responsibilities she could not ignore, with dreams sacrificed in the name of survival. Yet, even amidst the exhaustion and routine, she felt a spark that refused to be extinguished. The piano, the music, the dream that had once been hers, all of it lingered, waiting for the moment when she could reach for it again. The restaurant began to empty, the evening crowd thinning to a few lingering patrons. She tidied tables, wiped surfaces, and prepared for closing. Her body ached, and her mind was heavy, but there was a quiet satisfaction in the day's work. She had done her best, as she always did, and had navigated the chaos with skill and patience. Yet, as she glanced at the piano one last time before leaving, she felt a longing that would not be denied. Walking home, the city lights casting long shadows on the pavement, she thought about the life she wanted, but had yet to claim. She imagined herself playing for an audience, her music filling a hall, moving people in ways words never could. She imagined the thrill of performing, the joy of creating something beautiful from nothing, and the freedom of living fully in her passion. The thought both exhilarated and frightened her, for it was a dream she had kept hidden for so long that it almost felt impossible. Reaching her apartment, she sat quietly on the edge of her bed, exhausted yet restless. She allowed herself to close her eyes and remember the music, the melodies she had once known, the feeling of her fingers dancing across the keys. She made a silent promise to herself, a whisper of hope in the darkness. She would find a way back to this part of herself, no matter how long it took or what obstacles lay ahead. The piano was waiting, and she would be ready when the moment came. That night, as she drifted into a restless sleep, the faint memory of music lingered in her mind, a gentle reminder that even in a life filled with routine and struggle, dreams could survive. The spark was still there, quiet but persistent, waiting for the chance to ignite into something greater. And deep down, she knew that her story was far from over. The next morning, she arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual, carrying the weight of yesterday in her tired bones. The routine was familiar, the clinking of dishes, the smell of coffee, the quiet hum before the doors opened, but today something felt different. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, though she could not explain why. She shrugged it off, focusing on preparing the tables, folding napkins neatly, and checking that every chair was in place. She liked these small moments of order, the calm before the storm of a busy day. Customers began trickling in, the chatter and laughter blending into a background rhythm she could almost dance to. She moved gracefully between tables, taking orders, serving food, and keeping track of every need with a calm precision that only years of experience could bring. Each interaction was brief but meaningful, a chance to connect with people even if only for a few minutes. And yet, her mind often wandered, thinking about the piano in the corner, the melodies she once knew by heart, and the way her fingers itched to touch the keys. Around midday, a group of well-dressed individuals entered the restaurant. Their laughter carried easily across the room, confident and carefree. Among them was a man whose presence seemed to fill the space. He carried himself with authority and a casual charm that made others notice without even trying. She watched from a distance as he spoke to the hostess, gave instructions with a gentle but firm voice, and settled into a table with his guests. There was something different about him, a sense of purpose that set him apart from the usual crowd. She continued her work, taking orders and serving dishes, but she could not ignore the occasional glance he cast her way. Something about his eyes suggested curiosity, as if he were noticing more than just the surface. She felt a flutter of nervousness, but reminded herself to stay focused. She had dealt with all kinds of people before, and her work required patience and composure. Still, there was a strange energy about him that made her heart beat faster. As the lunch service progressed, he requested something unusual. He asked to see the piano in the corner, and the staff exchanged puzzled looks. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should be involved. Then, with a polite gesture, she led him to it. The piano was a familiar friend, and she felt a rush of memories as she brushed dust off the polished surface. It had been years since she last played, yet the instrument seemed to recognize her presence, welcoming her silently. The man smiled, leaning slightly on the piano as he studied it. "Do you play?" he asked casually, his tone light but probing. The question caught her off guard. She felt a flush rise in her cheeks, unsure of how to respond. Playing in front of strangers had never been her preference, and the thought of performing in a restaurant was intimidating. Yet, there was something in his gaze that made her consider it, a challenge wrapped in curiosity. She shook her head softly, muttering that she had not played in years. But he persisted, with a playful tone that left little room for refusal. "Why don't you try?" he suggested, gesturing to the keys. The room seemed to quiet round them. Waitstaff paused in their routines, customers glanced over, and the gentle hum of the restaurant faded into a background of expectation. It felt as if the world had momentarily narrowed to the space between her and the piano. Her fingers hovered above the keys, trembling slightly. Doubt and fear battled with longing and excitement. She could almost hear the music that wanted to flow from her hands, a melody stored deep inside, waiting to be released. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that this was just a chance, a moment that could pass by without consequence. The man watched patiently, a slight smile on his face, as if he knew she could do more than she realized. She pressed a single key, the note ringing clear and pure in the restaurant. It was a small sound, but it carried weight for her. The memory of countless hours spent practicing, learning, and losing herself in music came flooding back. She continued, her fingers finding the pattern of a familiar tune, the melody growing stronger and more confident with each passing moment. The room held its breath, the background chatter replaced by the flow of music. Customers and staff alike were drawn to the piano, some standing to listen, others watching in awe as her hands moved gracefully over the keys. The man who had challenged her leaned back slightly, his expression a mixture of surprise and admiration. He had expected perhaps a few notes, a simple tune, but what he heard was something far more profound. She played with feeling, with a mastery that seemed to have been waiting patiently for this moment to re-emerge. As the music continued, she felt a transformation within herself. The stress, the fatigue, and the monotony of her daily life melted away. She was no longer just a waitress carrying trays and balancing orders. She was a musician, a creator of beauty, a storyteller through sound. Each note was a declaration, each chord a testament to her resilience and hidden talent. She felt alive in a way she had not felt in years. When the final note lingered in the air, the room erupted in quiet applause. The moment was electric, a mixture of disbelief and admiration. She looked up at the man, who now stood fully upright, eyes shining with respect. He had witnessed something rare, a talent that defied expectations and challenged assumptions. His casual smile had shifted to one of genuine amazement, and he nodded toward her with a gesture that acknowledged the depth of what she had just shared. Her hands shook slightly as she stepped back from the piano, the adrenaline of performance still coursing through her veins. She had done something she thought she could no longer do, and the rush of achievement was intoxicating. The customers resumed their conversations, but a sense of reverence lingered in the air. Even those who had not fully understood the music felt the weight of the moment, the significance of a hidden talent revealed in the most unexpected place. The man approached her, his voice calm but earnest. "You have an incredible gift," he said, his words simple but profound. "Why hide it? Why let it stay buried?" She hesitated, caught off guard by the directness of his question. She had no immediate answer. Life had forced compromises, and dreams had been shelved in favor of survival. Yet, hearing someone acknowledge her talent without judgment stirred something deep within her, a mixture of hope and fear. He continued, explaining that talent like hers deserved recognition, opportunities, and a stage to shine on. He spoke not of fame or fortune, but of the simple idea that the world should not miss out on what she could offer. His words planted a seed, a small but persistent thought that perhaps it was not too late to reclaim a part of herself she had long thought lost. She listened, absorbing the encouragement, feeling a flicker of possibility ignite within her heart. As the lunch service ended, he left the restaurant with his group, leaving her with a lingering sense of awe and inspiration. The experience had shaken her in a way that no ordinary day at work ever had. She continued her duties, clearing tables and tidying the space, but her mind kept returning to the piano, to the music. and to the idea that her life could be more than the routine she had grown accustomed to. Something had shifted, a door had opened, and she could feel the first rays of opportunity slipping through. When she finally closed the restaurant and walked home, the city lights seemed brighter, the night air fresher. Her steps were lighter despite the exhaustion, as if a burden had been lifted. She thought about the piano, about the challenge she had faced, and about the possibility that her hidden talent might finally have a chance to flourish. The encounter with the man had left her both exhilarated and contemplative, a mixture of emotions that would keep her awake long into the night. At her apartment, she sat at her small table, a notebook in hand. She wrote down thoughts, ideas, and plans that had been dormant for years. She sketched out melodies she remembered, jotting notes and lyrics, allowing herself to dream once more. For the first time in a long while, she felt that the world was full of possibilities, that the life she had imagined in secret could become real if she dared to take the first step. As she finally prepared for sleep, the memory of the piano, the sound of her own music filling the room, stayed with her. She knew the road ahead would not be easy. Challenges and doubts would rise, and the comfort of routine would tempt her to stay in the old life. But something fundamental had changed. She had been reminded of her worth, her talent, and the joy that music brought to her soul. The encounter that day was a turning point, the spark of a journey that had only just begun, and she drifted into sleep with a quiet, hopeful excitement, knowing that her story was moving forward into uncharted, thrilling territory. The next afternoon, the restaurant buzzed with its usual energy. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the aroma of warm bread, and the chatter of customers filled every corner. She moved among the tables with practiced ease, balancing trays and taking orders, her mind constantly alert, her body moving on autopilot. But today, the memory of the previous day's encounter clung to her, a persistent hum in the background of her thoughts. She could not shake it. No matter how many plates she carried or how many customers smiled and spoke to her, it started subtly at first. A glance from a passing colleague, a hint of a smile from a regular customer who seemed to sense a change in her. But the real stir came when he returned, the same man, dressed sharply and exuding the quiet authority that had captured attention before, walked through the door with a small entourage. His eyes scanned the room briefly before settling on her. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement that carried weight and curiosity. Something in his gaze suggested that he was here for more than just lunch. The restaurant seemed to sense it too. The usual din faded slightly as he approached, his presence commanding attention without effort. He reached the piano, his fingers lightly brushing its polished surface. He turned toward her, a playful yet challenging smile on his face. "Are you ready?" he asked, his tone teasing but firm. The question was simple, but it carried the weight of expectation. The room seemed to hold its breath. The normal flow of the restaurant paused as if the world itself had shifted focus. She hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. Fear and excitement collided in a way she had not felt in years. She knew that she could play, but playing in front of so many eyes was different from the private moments she had cherished alone. Doubts flickered. What if she faltered? What if she disappointed? What if this brief glimpse of her talent vanished in embarrassment? She glanced around the room, noting the curious faces of customers and staff, and took a deep breath, trying to anchor herself. Slowly, she moved toward the piano. Her hands hovered above the keys, trembling slightly, as if the instrument itself sensed her nerves. The man's smile encouraged her, a silent signal that he believed in her even when she struggled to believe in herself. She reminded herself that this was just a moment, a single chance to let her music speak, and nothing more. The pressure was immense, but there was also a strange exhilaration in it, a thrill she had not felt in years. Her fingers touched the keys gently, producing a soft, tentative note. It resonated through the restaurant, drawing the attention of everyone present. The room grew quiet, the usual clatter and chatter replaced by an attentive silence. She closed her eyes briefly, recalling the countless hours of practice, the melodies that had once flowed effortlessly, the feeling of becoming one with the piano. And then, she began. The first few notes were careful, deliberate, testing the waters, as if she were gently introducing herself to an old friend. But as she continued, confidence blossomed. Her fingers moved with precision, weaving a melody that was both intricate and emotive. The music grew, filling the space with beauty and depth, a contrast to the ordinary environment of the restaurant. People stopped mid-conversation, captivated by the sound, drawn into a world that seemed to exist beyond the walls of the busy dining area. The man watched intently, his eyes reflecting surprise and admiration. He had expected a casual demonstration, perhaps a few notes to satisfy curiosity. What he witnessed was a performance, a display of raw talent and long-hidden skill. He leaned slightly forward, not out of impatience but in awe, realizing that he had underestimated her abilities. The music was not just technically impressive, it carried emotion, storytelling, and a power that transcended the ordinary moments of life in the restaurant. Customers began to gather near the piano, drawn like moths to the light of her music. Waiters paused in their duties, silently cheering her on. The once busy restaurant had transformed into an impromptu concert hall, every eye fixed on her, every ear attuned to the melodies flowing from her hands. She could feel the energy of the room responding to her playing, a connection that was both humbling and exhilarating. The music was no longer just hers, it belonged, in some way, to everyone present. A few tentative smiles and whispers started to spread through the crowd, a mixture of surprise and admiration. The man who had challenged her now stood still, his usual composed demeanor replaced by a visible sense of awe. He could see the years of hidden practice, the dedication, and the talent that had waited quietly for this moment. He understood that she was not merely playing notes, she was telling a story, sharing a piece of herself, revealing the depth of her character through music. Her fingers danced over the keys, moving with confidence and grace. The piece she had chosen was complex, a classical composition that demanded both technical skill and emotional expression. Each note was deliberate, each pause filled with meaning. She lost herself in the music, forgetting the eyes upon her, forgetting the restaurant, forgetting the world outside. It was as if the piano had become a vessel, carrying her thoughts, dreams, and emotions, transforming them into something tangible and beautiful. Time seemed to stretch and bend, moments that would normally feel long past in the blink of an eye, each note blending seamlessly into the next. She felt the adrenaline surge through her, a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She had never performed in such a setting, and yet the music came naturally, as if it had been waiting for this very moment to resurface. She played not to impress, not to prove anything, but simply because it was who she was, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to exist fully in her element. As she reached the climax of the piece, the room held its breath. The intensity of the music, the complexity of the chords, the precision of her technique all converged in a moment that was both powerful and moving. The audience was silent, caught up in the emotion and skill she displayed. Even the man who had challenged her seemed to momentarily forget his own presence, utterly absorbed in the performance. Her heart raced, but her hands were steady, guided by instinct, memory, and passion. When the final note faded into the air, the silence that followed was profound. It was not an empty silence, but one filled with respect, awe, and the weight of something remarkable witnessed. Then, gradually, applause began to ripple through the restaurant. At first hesitant, it quickly grew into a sustained ovation. Some customers clapped enthusiastically, others whistled softly, and even the staff joined in, cheering for a moment that none of them would forget. She stood quietly, letting the sound wash over her, a mixture of relief, pride, and disbelief. The man who had challenged her approached, his expression transformed. There was no longer a playful curiosity in his eyes, only admiration and respect. "That was extraordinary," he said simply, his voice carrying genuine amazement. "You have a gift that few ever get to see. Why have you kept it hidden?" She smiled softly, unsure how to respond. Life had forced her into routines, responsibilities, and compromises. The music had been a secret part of her life, cherished but set aside. Now, it had found a way back into the light. He continued to speak, not as a critic or a judge, but as someone who recognized the value of talent and the courage it took to reveal it. "You should not let this stay hidden. The world deserves to hear your music. Opportunities are waiting, if you are willing to take them." His words were gentle but insistent, planting seeds of possibility and hope in her mind. She felt a flicker of excitement and fear, knowing that this was the start of something significant, a turning point that could change the trajectory of her life. After he left, the energy in the restaurant slowly returned to normal, though the memory of her performance lingered in the air. Customers continued their meals, conversations resumed, but there was a subtle shift, a sense that something extraordinary had occurred. Her colleagues looked at her with new respect, and she felt a quiet pride in herself that had nothing to do with recognition from strangers. She had faced a challenge, revealed a hidden talent, and emerged stronger and more confident. That evening, walking home through the dimly lit streets, she felt lighter than she had in years. The city seemed different, somehow larger and full of possibilities she had long forgotten. She thought about the piano, the music, and the man who had dared her to play. The encounter had opened a door, and she knew that stepping through it would not be easy. Challenges, doubts, and fears would follow, but the spark had been ignited, and it would not be easily extinguished. At home, she sat quietly at her small table, reflecting on the day. She thought about the courage it had taken to play, the exhilaration of performing, and the sense of connection she had felt with everyone in the restaurant. She picked up her notebook and began jotting down notes, ideas, and plans. The melodies that had flowed through her hands earlier demanded attention, and she could not ignore them. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of purpose, a direction that went beyond the routine of daily life. As she finally prepared for sleep, the music echoed softly in her mind, a reminder that talent and passion, even when hidden, cannot be denied forever. She had faced the challenge, and in doing so, had discovered something vital about herself. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with potential and obstacles, but she felt ready to meet it. Her story was moving forward, and the first steps had been taken into a future where dreams and reality could intersect, and where her music could finally have the life it deserved. The evening had settled into the restaurant, the golden light of the setting sun spilling through the windows and casting a warm glow over the tables. The quiet hum of conversation mixed with the clatter of dishes, but there was an undercurrent of excitement that no one could ignore. Word had spread quickly about her performance earlier in the day. Patrons lingered longer, servers moved with a heightened energy, and there was a sense that something extraordinary had just occurred within these walls. She moved among the tables with her usual grace, carrying plates, refilling drinks, and attending to the customers, but her mind was elsewhere. The memory of her performance, the sound of the piano, and the rush of emotion it had brought lingered in her chest like a beating heart. Every glance toward the piano reignited the mixture of longing and excitement that had accompanied her earlier performance. She had revealed a part of herself that she had kept hidden for so long, and it felt both exhilarating and terrifying. As she placed a plate in front of a customer, she caught sight of him again, the man who had challenged her. He stood near the piano, his expression one of quiet anticipation, watching her with a keen eye. There was no question now about why he had returned. He had seen her talent, and he wanted to see more, to witness the depths of a gift he had only glimpsed. His presence made her heart race, but this time there was also a sense of readiness, a quiet determination that had begun to take root within her. When a lull came in the evening service, he stepped forward, drawing the attention of everyone present. His voice was calm but carried an unmistakable authority. "Would you honor us again?" he asked, gesturing toward the piano. The question was gentle, yet it resonated with expectation. The staff and customers alike paused to watch, and she felt the weight of the moment pressing on her shoulders. This was no longer a casual demonstration. It was a challenge in its purest form, a chance to prove not only her talent, but also her courage. She approached the piano slowly, each step measured and deliberate. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment, trembling slightly. But there was no hesitation this time. She had faced doubt and fear before, but now she felt a growing confidence, a trust in herself and in the music she carried within. The room grew quiet as she settled onto the bench, a collective pause that seemed to suspend time itself. The first notes were soft and tentative, a gentle introduction that allowed her to reconnect with the piano after the brief pause. The sound resonated, clear and pure, and the restaurant seemed to hold its breath. She closed her eyes, letting the memory of countless hours of practice guide her fingers. Slowly, the music grew in complexity, flowing seamlessly through intricate patterns, her hands moving with a grace and precision that drew gasps from the audience. Customers who had never noticed her before now watched in awe. The staff, too, were captivated, realizing that they were witnessing something rare and profound. The man who had challenged her remained still, his expression shifting from curiosity to admiration. He had expected skill, perhaps even talent, but what he saw now was mastery. She played not just with her hands, but with her heart, each note carrying emotion and depth, each chord telling a story that words could never capture. The music swelled, filling the room with a richness that seemed to lift the ordinary surroundings into something extraordinary. She moved through a complex classical piece, her fingers flying across the keys with both confidence and delicacy. The audience was spellbound. Conversations had ceased, footsteps paused, and even the ambient noises of the restaurant faded into insignificance. She was in a zone, a place where only she and the piano existed, where the outside world melted away, leaving only the music and the emotions it carried. Her eyes remained closed as she played, but she could feel the energy of the room, the connection with everyone who had stopped to listen. She could sense the astonishment in their movements, the admiration in their eyes, the way her music had transported them to a different world. Each note she struck was deliberate, intentional, and filled with meaning. She had never felt so alive, so connected, so entirely herself. The man who had challenged her took a step closer, his eyes fixed on her hands. He noticed the subtle expressions on her face, the slight tension in her shoulders, the controlled breathing that accompanied each phrase. He realized that this was more than a performance. It was a revelation, a glimpse into the depths of a talent that had been waiting patiently to be recognized. His admiration grew, and he found himself unable to look away, caught in the spell of her music. As the piece reached its most intense moment, the complexity of the chords and the speed of her fingers heightened the tension in the room. The audience felt the crescendo, a wave of emotion that seemed to sweep through them, leaving hearts pounding and breaths held. She played with precision and passion, fully aware of the impact she was having, yet entirely lost in the music herself. It was a delicate balance between control and surrender, a dance that only someone truly skilled could manage. Then came the final passage, a series of rapid notes that tested every ounce of her technique and focus. Her fingers moved with astonishing accuracy, the sound cascading through the restaurant like a river of emotion. Time seemed to slow, the world shrinking to the space between her and the piano, each note a step in a journey that the audience could feel, but not fully understand. She felt a surge of exhilaration, a mixture of relief, pride, and pure joy, knowing that she had reached the peak of her performance. When the last note faded, the room was enveloped in a profound silence. It was not the absence of sound, but the weight of something extraordinary just witnessed. For a moment, no one moved or spoke, as if the audience collectively held their breath, absorbing the significance of what had just transpired. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the restaurant. At first tentative, it grew into a thunderous ovation, filling every corner of the space. Patrons clapped enthusiastically, servers cheered, and even the man who had challenged her joined in, his face alight with admiration. She sat quietly for a moment, letting the applause wash over her. Her hands trembled slightly from the exertion and intensity, but her heart was full. The music had flowed through her, connecting with everyone in the room, and the response was overwhelming. She realized, in that moment, that she had not only played notes on a piano, but had shared a piece of her soul, a part of herself that had been hidden for too long. The man approached, his voice filled with genuine respect. "That was beyond anything I could have imagined," he said. "Your talent is extraordinary, and you have the courage to share it in a way that inspires everyone here. Why have you hidden this for so long?" She smiled softly, feeling a mixture of humility and pride. Life had demanded sacrifices, and the music had been put aside, but now she knew that it could never be completely hidden again. He continued, speaking not of fame or fortune, but of opportunity and recognition. "You deserve to share this with the world," he said. "There are people who would be honored to hear your music, to experience the depth and beauty you bring. You must not let this talent go unnoticed." His words resonated deeply within her, planting a seed of possibility and hope that she had not dared to nurture for years. She realized that this was not just a chance encounter, but a turning point, a moment that could change the course of her life. As the evening wore on, the restaurant slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Conversations resumed, dishes were cleared, and the ambient sounds of daily life returned. Yet, there was a subtle shift, a sense that something remarkable had occurred. Her colleagues treated her with newfound respect. Customers spoke of the performance in hushed tones, and she herself felt a quiet confidence that had not existed before. She had faced the challenge, revealed her hidden talent, and emerged stronger, more alive, and more aware of the possibilities that awaited her. Walking home that night, she felt a lightness in her step, a sense of purpose and anticipation. The city seemed transformed, each street and alley imbued with a quiet magic that reflected her own internal awakening. She thought about the piano, the music, and the man who had recognized her talent. The encounter had opened a door, one she had long feared to approach, and she knew that stepping through it would lead to opportunities, challenges, and experiences she had only dreamed of. At her apartment, she sat quietly, letting the events of the evening settle in her mind. She wrote in her notebook, capturing melodies, ideas, and reflections. She thought about the courage it had taken to perform, the joy she had felt in the music, and the profound connection she had experienced with her audience. She realized that her life was no longer defined solely by routine and obligation, but by the potential to embrace her talent and passion fully. As she prepared for sleep, the music lingered in her mind, a gentle reminder that talent, courage, and opportunity often intersect in unexpected ways. She understood that the journey ahead would be filled with challenges, moments of doubt, and choices that would test her resolve. Yet, she felt ready, empowered by the realization that she had faced fear, revealed her true self, and experienced the transformative power of her own music. The night wrapped around her, filled with promise, hope, and the quiet anticipation of a future waiting to be written. The morning after her most remarkable performance, the restaurant felt unusually vibrant. Regular customers had returned, some eager to see if the performance had been a one-time event. Whispers of admiration floated through the air, and even the staff moved with an unspoken energy, their eyes occasionally meeting hers with newfound respect. Yet, for her, the morning felt like a quiet storm, her thoughts consumed by the events of the previous day and the possibilities they had unlocked. She moved through her morning routine with careful precision, clearing tables, ranging silverware, and attending to the early breakfast crowd. Yet, her mind kept drifting to the piano, to the way her fingers had danced across the keys, and to the faces of those who had witnessed her music. She felt a mixture of pride and humility, realizing that her hidden talent had finally been seen, appreciated, and celebrated. The experience had left a mark on her, a renewed sense of purpose and a quiet excitement for what might come next. Later that day, the man who had challenged her returned. This time, he came alone, his expression calm but expectant. He walked directly to her as she attended to a table, his presence immediately drawing attention. "I wanted to speak with you," he said, his voice steady and kind. She nodded, curiosity and a touch of apprehension stirring within her. They moved to a quieter corner near the piano, away from the bustling energy of the restaurant. He began by praising her again, emphasizing the depth, skill, and emotion in her music. He spoke not just as an admirer, but as someone who understood the dedication required to achieve such mastery. His words were encouraging, genuine, and thoughtful, striking a chord deep within her. For the first time, she felt that someone truly recognized her talent, not just for its surface beauty but for the effort, passion, and sacrifices that had shaped it. Then he offered something unexpected, support and opportunity. He explained that he had connections with musicians, venues, and mentors who could help her further develop her skills and perform on larger stages. It was not an offer of money alone, but a chance to reclaim a part of her life that had been deferred for years. He spoke with patience, outlining possibilities without pressure, leaving room for her to make her own decisions. The gesture was both generous and empowering, a recognition of her worth and potential. She listened intently, absorbing the magnitude of what was being offered. Her mind raced with excitement, fear, and hope. She had dreamed of returning to music, but the thought had often felt impossible, distant, or impractical. Now, someone was not only acknowledging her talent, but actively helping her step into the path she had longed for. The reality of it was overwhelming, yet it ignited a spark of determination within her. She realized that this was her chance to take control of her destiny and embrace the part of herself that had remained dormant for too long. He also emphasized the importance of discipline, practice, and patience. Talent alone was not enough. It needed guidance, opportunities, and dedication to flourish fully. She nodded, understanding the truth in his words. The prospect of growth and learning, combined with the support he offered, felt like a bridge to a life she had only dared to imagine. The conversation was both inspiring and grounding, reminding her that success required effort, focus, and perseverance. As they spoke, she began to envision the possibilities. She imagined performing in small venues, gradually building her confidence, and eventually reaching larger audiences. She thought about collaborations with other musicians, learning new techniques, and exploring styles she had only ever studied in books. The idea of reclaiming her musical journey filled her with excitement and anticipation, a sense of direction that had been absent for too long. After a while, he left her with a parting thought, that talent, when nurtured and shared, could change lives not just her own, but those of the people who experienced it. He encouraged her to take the first step, to trust herself, and to embrace the opportunities that awaited. The words resonated deeply, leaving her with a sense of purpose and a quiet determination to follow the path that had been laid before her. The rest of the day passed in a blur. She continued her work at the restaurant, attending to customers, managing tasks, and moving through the familiar rhythms of her job. Yet, her mind remained focused on the future, on the music, and on the possibilities that the day's encounter had opened. Every glance at the piano reminded her of the promise she had made to herself to reclaim her passion, to perform, and to share her gift with the world. That evening, after the restaurant had closed and the streets were quiet, she sat at her piano, alone in the soft glow of her apartment. She began to play, her fingers moving with a renewed sense of purpose and freedom. The music flowed effortlessly, a testament to years of practice and a lifetime of hidden dedication. She felt alive in a way she had not felt for years, each note a declaration of her determination to embrace her talent fully. As the night progressed, she experimented with new melodies, combining classical techniques with her own interpretations and expressions. The piano became a partner, a confidant, and a source of inspiration. She felt the excitement of possibility, the thrill of discovery, and the quiet joy of reclaiming a part of herself that had been long neglected. Every chord resonated with meaning, every pause was intentional, and every sequence of notes told a story of resilience, hope, and ambition. Days turned into weeks, and she began to accept the guidance and support offered to her. She connected with mentors, attended workshops, and practiced with renewed intensity. The restaurant remained her daily routine, but the piano became her world outside of work, a space where she could explore, create, and grow. Each performance, each practice session, strengthened her confidence and skill, slowly transforming her from a hidden talent into a musician poised for recognition. The man continued to check in, offering advice, encouragement, and connections. His support was steady, never overbearing, allowing her to find her own rhythm while providing guidance when needed. Through his mentorship, she began to understand the broader landscape of music performance, the opportunities for growth, and the importance of self-belief. She realized that talent alone was not enough, but with determination, guidance, and courage, she could carve a path toward her dreams. Her colleagues at the restaurant noticed the change in her demeanor. There was a quiet confidence in the way she moved, a brightness in her smile, and an assurance in her interactions. Regular customers began to ask about her music, some expressing admiration for the courage and skill she had displayed. Even those who had not witnessed her performance could sense a shift, an energy that set her apart from the ordinary rhythm of daily life. One evening, she was asked to perform again at the restaurant for a small gathering of patrons and staff. This time, she played without hesitation, her fingers moving with precision, grace, and emotion. The room was captivated, and the applause at the end was both enthusiastic and heartfelt. She realized that sharing her music brought joy not just to herself but to others, creating a connection that transcended words. Each performance reinforced her commitment to her talent and her growing understanding of her own potential. With each passing day, she began to see her life in a new light. The routine of work at the restaurant remained, but it was now balanced with the pursuit of her passion. The piano had become a symbol of possibility, resilience, and hope, a reminder that talent, when nurtured and shared, could open doors to a future she had longed for. The man's mentorship continued to be invaluable, guiding her through opportunities, challenges, and the lessons necessary to grow as a musician and as an individual. She started to dream bigger, imagining performances in larger venues, collaborations with other musicians, and opportunities to inspire others through her music. The possibilities seemed endless, yet they were grounded in the reality of her dedication, practice, and determination. She understood that each step forward required effort, focus, and courage, but she was ready to embrace the journey. One evening, after a particularly moving practice session, she sat back and reflected on the transformation that had begun. From the quiet, routine-filled life of a waitress, she had stepped into a world of creativity, opportunity, and recognition. The journey was far from complete, and challenges awaited, but the spark that had been reignited was strong, steady, and unwavering. She had faced fear, embraced her talent, and taken the first steps toward a future she had only dared to imagine. As she prepared for sleep that night, the music still echoed softly in her mind. She understood that this was only the beginning, that growth and discovery would continue, and that her journey as a musician was just starting to unfold. The support, opportunities, and guidance she had received were invaluable, but ultimately, it was her courage, talent, and determination that would shape her path. The night wrapped around her, filled with promise, hope, and the quiet anticipation of a life transformed by music, resilience, and the unwavering belief in her own potential.